Hello, lovely people of the internet, and welcome back to another Hallowoods Weekly Q&A, behind the scenes, backstage, live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, it is a proper delight not only to have people out there in the world listening into the show, but on top of that, to sometimes come to these little behind the scenes events or other live streams that we hold. It is my deepest regret that we do not have a live show for you this spring, which breaks our yearly streak, because previously every spring we had done Spirits in the Spring for our first year, Old Bindings for our second year, and Star-Crossed Gods for our third. But this year, not only there's a couple reasons why we haven't gotten a live show this year. One, I don't have one written. The spark has not come to pass for what I need for the next live show. Part of that is also that although the live shows sometimes are inserted kind of in a different place in the narrative than usual, this season has opened with a lot of mystery and a lot of everyone trying to all the audience trying to figure out what pieces go where. And it's a season that begins with Nick not as loving and intimate with you as he usually is. And, the audience having to grapple a little bit with not having these dreamy diatribes about peace and truth and, all of that. Nick is a little busy at the moment with other stuff. In addition to when he can sneak off to do the narrative. So part of the not having a live show this spring was just due to not wanting to kind of like butt in several episodes in with something a little bit more familiar. We probably it is also a little bit I don't want to say the end of an era, but one of our good friends, Charlene Beyer, who is the voice of Zizix's Emptiness Between Worlds, has in this last year stopped working at the center that hosts the Streaming for Survivors fundraiser as well. And while we still would be happy to do Streaming for Survivors at some point, I think it was also the juncture where it was like, our our connection has departed the venture a little bit. We probably will be back for another live show at some point, I imagine. I'm sure we will. And at some point, I would like to do one that's actually live, but that's a little bit in the future for the moment. I talk every so often with Harlan Guthrie over at Malevolent about the idea of doing like a dual feature live show, which would work well for both of us, I think. So no incoming immediate plans for that, but it's the future is full of nebulous possibility. So onwards to our so-called Q&A. If you are watching this in the very meantime, in this very moment, if you click over to the YouTube side, if you're not there already, there is a chat. You can feel free to drop questions in there and I will see them and I can answer them during the stream. If you're watching this in the far future, well, this moment is behind you, which is a tragedy. However, there's probably another Q&A coming up whenever you're watching this recording. Lastly, if you are a patron, you can drop questions into the special patron ask box. And although it's not a matter of great urgency, your questions will have priority in the queue and, I'll make sure they get answered on the stream. That said, there are no patron questions in the ask box this week, so it's yeah, we are that particular issue is a non-issue, as it were. That said, in terms of the show's production, we find ourselves at the coming up on the 8th episode of the season. So shortly hereafter, we'll be sort of finishing our second set of 4 episodes. And it is a surprise to me that we already like 8 weeks in to the new season and all that it has brought. It's now to the point where people, I think maybe the shock of the new season's upheavals is kind of not diminishing, but I think people have adjusted a little bit their expectations and their ideas of what the season will look like. And they're beginning to piece everything together and scheme and theorize, which is a lot of fun to see. So overall, very happy to see, kind of everyone settling into their seats for how season 4 is running. There are a lot of delightful things on the way for the rest of this season. I think episode 8 next week should be a fun one. You guys got a fun one this week. Yeah, I was definitely looking forward to getting to share some of these sequences, and so I'm glad they're out there now. And then yeah, other than that, I am just writing ahead a couple of weeks at a time. Patching together my episodes, expanding the network of clues, and sort of continuing to plot out this, murder mystery, several murder mysteries layered on top of each other, as the season is going. So that is kind of a stable constant in the background right now as I begin to work on other projects as well. Let's see. Selkie in the chat says time isn't real. It is. It's a shock to me that we're already 148 episodes plus into this show. Like I still distinctly remember the days of having written, the first episode and just trying to get that together. Recording the first, having to re-record, I think at some points the first few episodes in Audition, trying to fix up the sound. It is wild to suddenly be here 3 big story arcs and the beginning of a 4th into this show, and still having it ongoing and still having people listen into it, which is really wild. It's also an interesting place to be because, like, although Hello from the Hallowoods is still a very, very small fish compared to, I think, the top contenders in the horror audio drama space, it does have an audience. It has like a small but loyal following, which is really cool to see. And it enables the ability to do fun projects and know that if something goes out, like there's at least got to be someone who appreciates it or someone who likes it. I don't take that for granted. It's not somewhere that you find yourself at the beginning of a project, and so it's important not to only do your creative things for other people, but it's nice to be appreciated. And especially with things like when it comes, for instance, to this week, we've opened up for ink sketch commissions again, which is one of the ways so far that's been pretty useful for sort of like filling in gaps in the show's budget, which is also my life, and managing to kind of bridge the gaps between seasons or cover harder months. And, it is some of those things like that where you open up and say like, hey, anyone want to help a little bit extra to support the show? You can't do that from a ground level most of the time. So it's very, very touching to have people out there who are tuned in and who are sometimes willing to take that extra step. Let's see. That said, Beanie says earlier in the chat, do you have any music that you associate with Hello from the Hallowoods? Definitely. I think some more strongly than others. There are a couple of artists who I think, maybe just lyrically or maybe just vibely have like been sources of inspiration for the show. Especially, I think Lord Huron. I have an album called Vide Noir, which is one of my favorite Lord Huron albums. And a number of bits of imagery from those songs, I think, have fed into the show very, very directly. Just like you'd be doodling or writing and a bit of music would come on. And there's definitely some inspiration to be found in that artist. Obviously, I love Kate Bush. I love Florence and the Machine. I love Jukebox the Ghost, and I think all 3 of those have fed into the show in some way or another when it comes to sort of spirit and atmosphere. Other than that, I do listen to music while writing. So every season of the Hallowoods gets a Spotify playlist, which I post the links to every so often. And so there is to be found sort of a like a nice easy list of inspiration music that I use when I'm trying to write for a particular atmosphere. Um, and often I'm sort of for upcoming projects accumulating songs that fit the vibe, just so that I have something to listen to when it comes time to start that project. And I try to make those really long playlists because when you're writing, you want like an 8-hour playlist on the line. Uh, that said, Femme Fatale says, "Hi everyone. May the shadows that swallow the unwary spare you this week." Well, if you made it through the eclipse, then you're watching this live stream. That's how logic goes, and so congratulations on surviving. Selkie says, "May I just say, Femme Fatale Danielle is the new best part of the podcast." I'm so glad. I'm so glad there was enough of the vibes there to make that something people could pick up on, because as you can gather, there is definitely a we're venturing into the realm of murder mystery this season. We're going hard on the bit, and so there's a number of nods. I'm a lover of noir detective stories myself, so I'm loving tapping into that when it comes to trying to interpret the world of the Hallowoods through that particular lens, and see where people have ended up in kind of various places and feeding into different tropes. And sometimes trying to answer the question of, if in the place that we find ourselves with season 4, where have all these people ended up, and what would they be up to now, and what kind of would their own inspiration and creativity and sense of direction, where would that put them in this modern age? And so the more old faces that we reunite with, I love just touching in and seeing where people have ended up after this time later. Um, so that has been a delight. Has anyone told you that you got the perfect? Danielle is fantastic, says Femme Fatale. Fridge says, "Has anyone told you that you got the perfect voice to a eldritch horror entity?" Um, no, it's come along, but I think one of the biggest, if there's one single source of complaints that we get the most, it's the voice acting in the early episodes, and I can't blame them. It was my very first voiceover project. I had never worked on a voice before. And so reading to an audience was a challenge, something brand new that I was trying to learn how to do. I knew what I was going for in terms of vibe, but I had no practice. I didn't know how to achieve it. And I think even my voice, definitely just practice has helped. I think I can do things now with accents and tones and variation that I didn't know how to do at that time. Um, so it's very funny if you listen back to those early episodes and compare Nicky Nick then, which mostly sounds like me talking very slowly, to Nicky Nick now, which is this much deeper kind of more theatrical tone. I think something that even there's no excusing the quality early on there, but I think one thing that maybe throws people off as well is that Nicky Nick's voice is not my voice. Nicky Nick has an affectation. Nicky Nick has a particular way of talking that is over the top. Was supposed to be over the top, and so I think that sometimes confuses people as well, because I'm not just trying to Otis Jiry, like just have a buttery voice, but it is a character itself that is narrating, and that character is doing a thing. And so I think that aspect doesn't become clear for a couple of episodes into Hello from the Hallowoods, really. Even maybe like 10 to 12 episodes until we really start figuring out that Nicky Nick is going to be not just the voice of the show, but like a character within the show, and that there's baggage to that character and there's stuff for that character. So I think sometimes is a bit of a disconnect as well. But that said, let's see. In the chat, thank you so much for popping in the chat, everyone. It's lovely to see you. Beanie says, "Would you ever think about selling stickers, etc.?" The answer is yes. The answer is yes. I currently do. However, it's not a great setup. The way we currently have merch set up is print on demand, which is essentially I've created a design. Yeah, I've attached it to a product that exists on the internet, a sort of white label product. And then when people order it through the Hallowoods website, one of those is created and mailed out to that person, which means that I don't have a big pile of Hallowoods merch. The only merch I have like in a closet here is the stuff for patrons themselves, which includes some Mr. Friendly stickers, some postcards, metal Downing Hill Library cards for the fancy schmancy patrons, and enamel Stone Maiden band pins for the, I think, $20 patrons. I have the patron benefit stuff on hand, but all our merch is handled through currently print on demand. Now, the downside of print on demand is that it's expensive for both of us. If you order any Hallowoods product through the website, there's almost no the return on that for me is usually only like a couple of cents, because I'm trying to keep prices as low as they possibly can for people to have Hallowoods merch. Most of the money in that goes towards the production. If you order a Hallowoods t-shirt, for instance, most of the, I think, $25 or something that gets paid goes towards the production of the thing itself and then shipping. And so the merch is almost offered at cost when it comes to Halloween stuff currently, which is fine for me. I don't care. But it unfortunately means that the prices are also, I think, a little bit more, because it is ordered one at a time, bespoke, pretty much. It's not optimal pricing for anybody. The worst part is stickers, because currently a single Halloween sticker, you should be able to get a sticker for $2 and have put it in an envelope and send it and have it be done. However, the print-on-demand services that provide stickers charge a good couple bucks per sticker. And on top of that, there's a good couple bucks in shipping per sticker. And there's not like a convenient way to bundle that most of the time. So I would love to offer a bin of 50 stickers for $10 or something. But the way that is currently set up through the Hallowoods site, it's something like $7 per sticker, which is obnoxious. But that $7 doesn't go to me; it goes to the people making the stickers. So there are stickers. I can't say that print on demand is the best way to order them. It is slightly lower on my list of priorities. There's a book to make first, but overhauling the way that the Hallowoods merch system works is on our sort of to-do list. It's been on the to-do list for a couple months, and I would love to be offering better options that are a bit less cost-intensive to all people involved. Someone had asked both for complete sticker sets of all of the episode covers, as well as posters with all of the episode covers for a season. I would love to do both of those. I would also love to do both of those at a way where, it's less crazy per item. So I've got to figure that out on this end, but it is on the list at least of things to consider. I need to send a couple more emails to a company called DFTBA. Don't forget to be awesome. It is a merch company run by Hank Green's folks. And they make really top tier podcast merch for a couple of different shows, including some of Lauren Chippen's Atypical Artists shows and a couple of others in our neighborhood. I don't know if they've really taken on anyone who does horror podcasts specifically, but they are probably my number one group that I would want to work with when it comes to merch. So I will it's possible that our upgrade in the merch would be working with them if I can sort of swing the negotiation side of it. But that would be excellent. And then some of those things would become a lot more viable to do and a lot less like cost intensive when it comes to what you guys have to pay to get cool stickers. In the meantime, I would also promote. Hallowoods has a pretty lenient policy on fan made content. Most mostly it's like there's a limited amount that I can make, and there's a limited amount of stuff I can offer for a reasonable cost. So I've loved to see on sites. I can't recommend Redbubble, but I can recommend the people on Redbubble that make Hallowoods merch. So if your sticker needs are not being met, I know there's at least a few Redbubble creators that have made some bespoke Hallowoods fan art stickers and so forth. Definitely recommend giving them a search, seeing if there's anything that you like. Because in the end, it's still, if a sticker is out on a briefcase or something, or a water bottle or whatever, or a laptop, then, it's still sharing the name of the show around. So I think it's good. That said, Refrigerator says, if I could, I would do an animation of Percy and Diggory to row Kapara's dead come talking. Oh, we have some lovely animatics out there. Holy moly. Yeah, I can't remember any of the like specific creators' video names off the top of my head, but I'm always amazed every time a piece of Hallowoods animation comes around. I think, yeah, because the animation is a particular area that I have a great interest for. I was originally going to work in animation before getting into horror writing instead. And so I have a lot of roots and art styles. And, originally, Hallowoods was going to be an animated project. I had just seen Over the Garden Wall. I was like, whoa, this would be a really cool, like, style to tell the story in. So a lot of the early Hallowoods character designs are built as animation character designs. But I ended up finding audio drama instead and going for that route in order to tell 45 minutes of story per week, half an hour of story per week, instead of like 2 minutes of story every 6 months. So that was kind of the kicker. As much as I would like to pull, a has-been hotel and make it all produce an animated series, homebrew. And as I've heard mixed things about the quality of the behind the scenes for that anyways, but animation is hard. Animation takes a lot of time. So I ended up going for something a little bit more volume of content. I still would love to do animation at some point, and if they ever did a Hallowoods adaptation, animation would be lovely for it. That said, Refrigerator in the chat says, you talked about the voices, and I was listening to the early episodes, and Diggory's voice was very different for what it is now. But I like to think it's from their lack of lung usages. Yes. I forget what Diggory's voice sounded like in the first few episodes, but I'm tempted to think it was more of a rasp, more of a like Diggory Graves. And again, like there's two parts to that. Partly, again, as a first voice acting project, it was still kind of new, and I wasn't always able to pull off what I was thinking. But another part of it is that sometimes you kind of find the voice of a character when you've gotten more time with them, when you've gotten more practice. I think by the time that I was recording episode 1 Keys, I probably had only written to episode 4 or episode 8. I definitely hadn't gotten a really good grasp of who Diggory was yet. And frankly, I don't think I would have been able to do the way that their voice works now at that time. Because the way their voice eventually evolved has this kind of gravel, has this kind of breathy rasp to it, but there's also this kind of pleasant melodic undertone. So there's like two things happening at once, and that means that their voice, sounds kind of dead and wheezy, but also at the same time sounds polite and upstanding and not bothered. And so there, that was a combination that just I think evolved a little bit as I got to know Diggory better and got to write these episodes and got a better idea of what Diggory's personality was like. Um, Beyond just kind of this empty husk that's wandering the wilderness, that there is this kind of gentle giant almost, inherent in their personality. Um, let's see. Dynamic Loss. Dynamic Loss says, I haven't finished the last season, but I do love the show. It's given me a lot of hope in these trying times. So thanks for that. Absolutely. It gives me hope in trying times too, to get to continue making something and putting it out there. Um, and yes, I mean, I'm not finished with the last season either. The last season is ongoing. Season 4 is rolling out on a weekly basis. We are currently 8 episodes in. Season 4 will be 30 episodes in total. So there's 22 more weeks of this before it wraps. We are optimistically looking at a much shorter break. It's possible that we will get into season 5 as early as Halloween this year, which would be fun. But we will stay tuned on what the scheduling looks like. I don't want to make any guarantees until we've gotten a little bit closer to the end of this one. But that said, this is gonna be a fun season. It's been a fun one to write and plan and create and dream about for the last year or two. So I'm also enjoying people finally getting to react to it and see what people think and see how it comes in. That said, if you're talking about haven't finished season 3, season 3 was I think season 3 was hard to produce. I think it was definitely probably the most trouble I've had with making a season, just because it definitely, between the heavy format and that our episodes were mostly going to 45 to 50 minutes per week. There was just a lot of content to write, and it was very dense, and I definitely was struggling to keep up with it. And especially, there's not just the writing that needs to be done, but there's also a lot that needs to happen after that on the production side, and especially the editing is what takes the longest, because it probably takes me, whatever the final length of the episode is, it probably takes about 4 times that for me to edit it, which means that if I'm editing a half-hour episode, as currently I am, or even I think current episodes might even only be 25 minutes on average, but that currently takes an hour and a half easy. Whereas if it's nearly an hour long episode, it's like 4 hours to edit, which is a lot to sit down for. And so definitely the longer that the show gets, the exponentially higher the workload is. And season 3 was, it was definitely a sheer amount of work. I'm happy that it came out well. I'm happy that it's done. But it was definitely a slog on the production side. So it's good. I was happy to see the format out and through. I'm definitely not complaining about being back to a somewhat shorter average episode length this season as well. I don't know if we'll stay here forever. Certainly, even season 1 had half-hour episodes at the start and then grew to the 45-minute format when the story got deeper, sort of more dense. But I would not be surprised if we end up back there eventually. But in the meantime, it's a good break, and it's allowing for working on other projects too, like outlining novels and sort of getting other projects on the road. I need to start drawing commissions. Their orders are coming in for those ink sketches, and I need to start doing the first batch of them this week, most likely. So stay tuned for sort of in progress sketches as I begin to get those done as well. And if you haven't heard, we are currently doing another round of hand-drawn ink sketches. So I will doodle out designs of your choice, ship those out across the world. It's not quite a sticker, but it's the next best thing. In the meantime, I believe that will bring us to the end of today's Q&A. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in from across this earthly realm. Thank you for tuning into the show. I hope you enjoy this Wednesday as we get to episode 148, I believe, 8 episodes into the new season. Until then, stay tuned and see you around the bend. Take care, everybody.